about Charlie Crow and C-Square's ability, power to convene, just to look at this room and to look at the lineup of speakers. And I would like to rename the Festival of Media, perhaps the Festival of Media Minds, because indeed we do have the great protagonist of the media transformation with us here in the next 2 days, and also rising stars, media sparks that will be the protagonist in years to come, with whom you will have to deal with. Now, I am the chairman, I'm the moderator, so my role here is to get a high-level discussion going. I cannot do it alone, so I really do need your engagement. It's a big room, it's perhaps intimidating, but I will be walking the floor, I will be lighting up the audience here, so you can raise your hand and ask questions. And remember, if we all think the same, somebody isn't thinking. So let's get a high-level discussion going. Do have your questions ready. Lo podemos hacer en español si queréis. Si voce quiser falar en portugués, no prazer. Any language you want to ask questions, I speak 6 of them. I'll be happy to take on the answers for you, perhaps in the native language as well. Charlie mentioned the theme of the conference, harnessing the power of transformation. And as he also mentioned, it is a fact that we live at a time where the business model has not just been disrupted, it has been completely broken. And nobody really knows what that business model is in the future. It's in constant process of reinvention. And at a time like this, an organization needs to be extremely flexible. A brand that wants to engage with that content needs to be completely, totally flexible, with always an eye on the future, on the next big thing. But not just the next big thing that is going to be a trend, but the next big thing that will become mainstream. So how do we keep an eye on the future? Our first speaker is going to take us back to the future. He's been described by The Atlantic as the Timothy Leary of the video viral age. And for those of you who do not know who the late Timothy Leary was, he was the greatest proponent of LSD as a therapeutic cure to all matter of madness. So to get us started with Back to the Future, please welcome the Timothy Leary of the viral video age. He is Jason Silva. Jason.
Hi everybody, how's it going? What a thrill to be here with you guys. It's really an honor to be back in Miami. This is where I went to university. I'm originally from Venezuela, so un saludo en español a todos mis contemporáneos latinos. I'm thrilled to be here because I'm very passionate about creativity. I'm very passionate about innovation. I'm very passionate about human imagination. And this has really led to a passion for technology, because I believe that technology is the literalization of human imagination. Technology is how we turn our minds inside out. Technology is how we take in matter of low organization, we put it through the filters of the human mind, and we extrude space shuttles and smartphones and marvelous computers. Technology is us. It's how we extend our reach. The cognitive philosophers David Chalmers and Andy Clark actually refer to technology as literally a scaffolding that extends our thought, our reach, and our vision. iPhone, therefore I am, they like to say. And what we need to get over is what they call this skin back bias, and this belief that we somehow end at our skin tissue and that the world out there is separate from us. The man-made world is a condensation of human imagination. It's us. And so we use these tools to transform the world. We use these tools to extend the boundaries of the possible. But what's most amazing about technology, and the reason that we are living in an age of disruption, in an age of transformation, in an age of such rapid change that we can't quite figure out what to do with this change, is because technology evolves on an exponential curve. And this is what really runs counterintuitive to the way our brains interpret change. You know, as Peter Diamandis, the co-founder of the X Prize Foundation, likes to say, we evolved in a world 100,000 years ago that was linear and that was local. That's what our brains intuitively understand, is linear change. How far away is that predator before it comes over and eats me? Linear change, linear calculation. We don't live in a linear local world anymore. We live in a world that is global and exponential. Now, why is this counterintuitive? I'm going to give you an example, made famous by the futurist Ray Kurzweil, who's now the head of engineering at Google. And he says if you take 30 linear steps, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, by step 30, you get to 30. That's intuitive, that's linear change. That's how we normally think about change. And we couldn't be more wrong. Because of exponential change, consider the same 30 steps. Instead of going 1 to 30 linearly, you would go 2, 4, 8, 16. By step 30, you're at 1 billion. So consider that. 30 linear steps gets you to 30. 30 exponential steps gets you to 1 billion. That's the reason why the smartphone in your pocket today, this ubiquitous device that you take for granted, is actually 1 million times cheaper, 1 million times smaller, and 1,000 times more powerful than what used to be a $60 million supercomputer that was half a building in size 40 years ago in Stanford University. So what used to be half a building now fits in your pocket. In fact, what fits in your pocket is 1,000 times more powerful. Now what currently fits in your pocket on the back of these exponential technological growth curves in the next 25 years is going to shrink down to blood cell-sized devices interfacing directly with your biological neurons, further reverse engineering us from inside out and extending the boundaries of our intelligence and our cognitive capacities. So this is crazy. A young person with a smartphone in Africa, in Latin America, has access to better communications technology than the US president had 25 years ago. How does this transform what becomes possible? So a while back, I started doing a video series. I call these videos Shots of Philosophical Espresso. And the idea was to put out these notions of innovation, transformation, to convert the mind, to create a cognitive shift in audiences, to think about disruption not as a problem, but as an opportunity for reinvention, for transformation. Don't forget that we are the species that has always transformed its boundaries. We didn't stay in the caves. We haven't stayed on the planet. Soon the revolutions in healthcare and biotechnology mean we won't even stay within the limitations of biology. Every time we make a telephone call, we collapse geography. We create a techno-social wormhole, as Amber Case refers to it, that allows us to connect instantaneously, mind-to-mind communication that transcends, that collapses distance, time, and space. We're already gods, and we don't even realize it. So the first video I want to show you today is about this notion. It's an anthem on transformation. It's an anthem on the unique human capacity to leverage our collective intelligence and transcend boundaries, which is really the theme that I want to get you guys into and comfortable with. So the exponential change means exponential opportunity for reinvention. Let's show the first video, please. So there's a great line by Shakespeare in which he says, "We know what we are, we know not what we may be." And in the age of accelerating technologies in which we extend the cognitive reach of our minds, the perimeters of our humanness with these extensions of self, these exoskeletons, these technological scaffoldings, the wings of our aircrafts and the signals traveling through our smartphones, sending our thoughts electrified at the speed of light across oceans of sky. We redefine and extend what it means to be human. Edward O. Wilson says, we have actually decommissioned natural selection, and now we must look deep within ourselves and decide what we wish to become. We are now the chief agents of evolution. We have reverse engineered the software of biology and are about to rewire and upgrade and redefine what it is to be a Homo sapien. Juan Enriquez uses the term
Homo evolutus, the being that evolves itself, that transforms itself, right? Ray Kurzweil, we didn't stay in the caves. We had to stay on the planet. Biology, just another membrane to be transcended. You know, Marvin Minsky used to say, will robots inherit the earth? Yes, they will, but they will be our children. You know, I love this idea because we hear the term transhumanism, and what it means to be human is to be transhuman. We are the species that transforms and transcends. We never stop. We always did. It's what we are.
So, I've talked about exponential change. I've talked about technology's capacity to extend our limits, but we've really only seen that with the information technology revolution, with the digital revolution. But you see, what's happening now is that the digital revolution is spilling over into the meat space. It's spilling over into the physical world. Biotechnology, gene sequencing, is now going 3 times faster than exponential. 3 times faster than Moore's Law. The physicist Freeman Dyson imagines a near future where a new generation of artists will be writing genomes with the fluency that Blake and Byron wrote verses. What's going to happen when biology becomes the new canvas for our genius, becomes the new canvas for our creativity and self-expression? What are we going to make when we can remake ourselves, when we can reprogram our biological wetware? What's the iOS 9.0 going to look like for human beings? When we upgrade ourselves, so when we upgrade our smartphones. And that's just biotech. Then you have nanotechnology, which is going to start patterning atoms to constituents of the physical world the same way we pattern bits of information in the digital world. So all of a sudden, the physical world becomes programmable. The physical world becomes something that we can render, the way we can render our imagination. And also subject to exponential growth curves and exponential change. So this is the reason why the term the technological singularity, or the rapture of the nerds, as some describe it, has become such a hot item these days. Because the technological singularity is a metaphor to describe something ineffable, something we can't imagine with our pre-upgraded brain. The singularity is what happens when we have these overlapping revolutions. IT, AI, the creation of non-biological minds, you know, that aren't limited by the 56K modem hardware that we have. AI, biological mind, the biotech revolution and the nanotech revolution, the 3 of them overlapping together lead us towards what in physics is called a singularity. Black hole-like conditions, something in which light cannot even escape. How do you explain to a chimpanzee the nuances of Shakespeare? He lacks the wetware to understand, and we lack the wetware to conceive of what becomes possible on the back of these exponential technologies. And so all we can do is use metaphor and use poetry to dissolve boundary, to transcend the been-theres and done-thats of the adult mind, so that we can unleash the human imagination. The co-founder of Wired magazine, Kevin Kelly, refers to technology as the technium, the 7th kingdom of life, subject to the same evolutionary forces as biological evolution. Technology has wants and needs and pulls. It's subject to self-organization, just like biology. This train is moving whether we're on it or not, so we might as well direct it in positive directions. So the next video I want to show you is part of a series I did with AOL called The Future of Us. It's an example of media celebrating innovation, sponsored by Chevrolet, you know, which is great, because I'm a big fan of branded content. So let's show the next video, The Future of Us.
So let's talk about the future of us. What does that even mean? The future of us. It's a look at what comes next. It's a look at what might be. Because today, exponentially emerging technologies are transforming what's possible. They're helping us overcome, transcend, even biological limitations. The very rules of what it is to be human are up for grabs. We're rewriting the software of life with biotechnology. We're turning matter into a programmable medium with nanotechnology. We're creating sentient minds with artificial intelligence that are not bound by the limitations of biology. These 3 evolution, PNR, genetic nanotechnology and robotics, together will be leveraged to lead us towards a black hole-like, impossible to fathom singularity. It's like staring into the sun, a moment of arousing symphonic climax when all of mind, leveraged and networked together, transcends its biological origins and we become something more. People worry about the AIs and the them. Well, as Kurzweil says, that's going to be us. The future of us is ours to dream up.
Now, one of the key messages I want to put into your brains is the importance of dissolving boundaries. You know, we've looked into the far future, so then we bring it back to the now. How do we approach our day-to-day? How do we adapt a fluidity in our thinking to become comfortable with these disruptive changes? You know, I host a television show on the National Geographic Channel called Brain Games, in which sometimes we ask, how do we transcend our old, habituated modes of thinking? How do we transcend our patterns of thought that sometimes make us blind to what's right under our nose? And one of the ways we do it, I think, is with something that Stephen Johnson wrote about in his book, Where Good Ideas Come From, A Natural History of Innovation. And he talks about the importance of probing the adjacent possible. And he describes the adjacent possible as a shadow future that hovers over the now. It's this future that casting a shadow over the now, providing a map, providing cartography of all the ways in which the present might reinvent itself. So then my challenge to you is, how are you challenging how are you probing your adjacent possible? How are you going to dissolve those boundaries? Everything good and great begins at the edge of our comfort zone. That's when we surprise ourselves. That's when we innovate. That's when we get inspired and experience cognitive ecstasy, an exhilarating neurostorm of intense intellectual pleasure. It's associated with great innovation and great invention. So this video is about this notion of dissolving boundaries. Let's show the next video.
I'm very inspired by the idea of the adjacent possible that Stephen Johnson wrote about in his book, Where Good Ideas Come From. And he says that the adjacent possible is like a shadow future that sort of hovers over the present state of things. The adjacent possible is like a map of all the ways in which the present can reinvent itself. I love this idea because it implies a kind of built-in optimism in how we see the world. It sort of implies a different way of looking at things that is not held back, that will not be bound by what is, but that is always remixing, that is always reinventing, that is always looking at how we can transform the material properties of the present so that we can bring into being our virtual models, our imaginative visions. Because that's what human beings do. Imagination allows us to conceive of these delightful future possibilities and then literally pull the present forward to meet it. And increasingly powerful technologies are shrinking the lag time between what we can imagine and what we can create. The adjacent possible is a move that is accelerating. Our adjacent possible is increasingly being able to be instantiated in real time. We're time-lapsing our capacity to literally render our dreams into being. So for that reason, the adjacent possible rocks my imagination.
You know, you see the adjacent possible being probed by entrepreneurs today. You know, Richard Branson's Virgin Galactic talking about probing the adjacent possible. Or the Google co-founder Larry Page went and started Calico, the California Life Extension Company, that's going to utilize biotechnology breakthroughs to reverse engineer the aging process. We're seeing the adjacent possible every day. Now, something that I think is very important, I say that the best media traffics in the currency of inspiration. I'm interested in inspiration. I'm passionate about intellectual ecstasy and awe, curiosity and awe. So a while back, I stumbled upon a study out of Stanford University on the subject matter of awe. And they described awe as an experience of such perceptual expansion, such perceptual vastness, that you literally have to reconfigure your mental models, your mental maps of the world in order to assimilate what you're seeing. You have no reference points. Imagine the first time you went to the Grand Canyon, or La Gran Sabana in Venezuela, Angel Falls maybe, or when you went to an IMAX film and you saw Gravity. You've never seen anything like it before. You have no maps for what you're seeing, and so instead you experience the exhilaration. You stand in awe. You're pulled so radically out of context, as Tom Robbins says. You're forced to gawk in amazement, to marvel. And this sensation of awe, which we've all experienced and we all know so well, it turns out has therapeutic benefits that go beyond the temporary experience of awe. Experiences of awe that dissolve the ego, that lead to these moments of secular transcendence in a way, leave us with residual feelings of well-being, increased feelings of compassion, increased feelings of creativity and innovation. So what do we find? We find that in order to use our heads, we've got to go out of our minds, as Timothy Leary used to say. It means that stepping outside our comfort zone makes us better, more efficient, more creative, more compassionate people. So we should seize these disruptions. We should seize these challenges as a chance to blow our minds, try something new, do something that's never been done before, so that we can awe ourselves and awe the world. I started a YouTube channel called Shots of Awe in partnership with TestTube, which is part of Discovery Digital Networks. They came to me and they said, "We love these videos you've been doing. We want to partner with you to take them up a notch." And so now, every week I put out these videos with the goal of inspiring people, of planting an inception in people's brains to dissolve boundaries and hopefully, for a second, send them tumbling down that rabbit hole, experience a little bit of awe, and have them see the world anew. So this next video is about that topic. It's about the power, the transformative power of awe. Let's show it.
I think a lot about the contrast between banality and wonder, between disengagement and radiant ecstasy, between being unaffected by the here and now, and being absolutely ravished emotionally by it. And I think one of the problems for human beings is mental habits. Once we create a comfort zone, we rarely step outside of that comfort zone. But the consequence of that is a phenomenon known as hedonic adaptation. Overstimulation to the same kind of thing, the same stimuli again and again and again, renders said stimuli invisible. Your brain has already mapped it in its own head, and you no longer literally have to be engaged by that. You have eyes yet see not, ears that hear not, and hearts that neither feel nor understand. There's a great book called The Wondering Brain that says that one of the ways that we elicit wonder is by scrambling the self temporarily so that the world can seep in. As Huey Miller says, even the blade of grass, when given proper attention, becomes an infinitely magnificent world in itself. Darwin said attention, if sudden and close, graduates into surprise, and this into astonishment, and this into stupefied amazement. That's what rapture is. That's what illumination is. That's sort of infinite comprehending awe that human beings love so much. And so how do we do that? How do we mess with our perceptual apparatus in order to have the kind of emotional and aesthetic experience from life that we render most meaningful? Because we all know those moments are there. Those are the moments that make final cut. Only in these moments we experience afresh the hardly bearable ecstasy of direct energy exploding on our nerve endings. This is the rhapsodic, ecstatic bursting forth of awe that expands our perceptual parameters beyond all previous limits. And we literally have to reconfigure our mental models of the world in order to assimilate the beauty of that download. That is what it means to be inspired. The Greek root of the term means to breathe in, to take it in. We fit the universe through our brains and it comes out in the form of nothing less than poetry. We have a responsibility to awe.
So hopefully you're feeling inspired, feeling some boundaries are being dissolved. Now I want to leave you with the last video to to really punch in the point here of innovation and transformation. We've talked about the future, we've talked about what attitude to apply today, and now I want to show you a video that is the ultimate mind-messing, mind-dissolving, transformative experience. It's called the transcension hypothesis, and it speculates about what happens after the technological singularity. And it asks the question of Fermi's paradox. In a universe as vast as ours, it's been around for billions and billions and billions of years, surely there would have been the conditions for life to have emerged somewhere else, particularly intelligent life. Yet we don't see any evidence of it. And the reason, according to the transcension hypothesis, is that outward expansion is primitive, that the real expansion is inwards. Denser and denser computational substrates, virtual worlds, the imagination, we go in. So let's show the last video, transcension.
Let's talk about the transcension hypothesis, which is really a kind of intellectual aerobics exercise. It's a fascinating account coined by John Smart, the futurist, to account for Fermi's paradox. Now, Fermi's paradox is basically, look, the universe is infinitely grand, it's unfathomable in scope. There's conditions for life everywhere to have emerged. We're discovering more exoplanets all the time. Yet where is all the evidence? How come we can't find any evidence of intelligent civilizations evolving anywhere else? That is a paradox. So much bigness and no evidence of life. So John Smart says, it's actually not that complicated, because consider what happens. Technologically advanced civilizations, only in their adolescence, expand outwards. It's primitive. Oh, we're going to hunt and conquer lands. We're going to reach that moon and that planet. And he says, yeah, that's only in our technological adolescence. As civilizations become more intelligent, they start realizing that the real exploration is going in, not going out. We're creating denser and denser computational substrates. We're spending more of our mind time, more of our thinking time in virtual spaces anyway. And eventually we're going to create sentience, non-biological minds that are living inside of femtoscale densities of computing. Eventually we will actually get to black hole-like conditions where these sentient minds, which will be us, can disappear out of the visible universe, be slingshotted into the end of time, and then give a high five to every other technologically advanced civilization over there. So that is transcension. You know why we can't see evidence? Because they literally disappeared as virtual minds into these femtoscale-like black hole dimensions and escape this visible universe. So how's that for a dinner party chat?
And with 8 seconds to go. Well, that was good. Thank you guys very much. I'd love to continue the conversation with all of you, like at Jason Silva on Twitter, and then we're going to have a little
Jason, we do have a bit of time. Let me kick it off with perhaps reflecting what's in the mind of a lot of people here. You're, to quote Churchill, as you like to quote high-minders, you're a bit of a riddle, wrapped in a mystery inside an enigma. It's very difficult to land you as to what perhaps is relevant to this audience. Fascinating insights, but let me just probe you a bit and try to land it for us, because everybody here is constantly bombarded with the next big thing in terms of technology, whether it's biotech, whether it's wear tech, whether it's nanotech. And a lot of these startups telling them, put your money in me, in us, in this new next thing. So how can you tell the next big thing, which is indeed a trend, to something that will become mainstream? What method to use for them to ascertain what is fluff and what is solid?
Yeah, well, I think in the world of media, we need to look at technologies that are going to create more intense, visceral, mediated experiences. You know, we are mediated beings, we are mediated by our society, we are mediated by our culture, we are mediated by the media that we expose ourselves to. So we're always looking for more immersive forms of media. We want to be sucked in, we want to be consumed. So I'm excited by virtual reality. I mean, this has been kind of a wet dream for technologists for years. You know, Terence McKenna in the 90s was already talking about this stuff, saying virtual reality will allow us to turn our minds inside out, and that the real dream is the ultimate engine of empathy that becomes possible with virtual reality. You know, virtual reality achieves this phenomenon of presence. Presence is a psychological feeling of being there that you may be approached with an IMAX film. You know, you certainly don't get it with your smartphone, which is the reason why our attention spans are so scrambled, because ultimately the small screen is wonderful to have, but it doesn't grip you like an IMAX theater. but I think that virtual reality, Oculus Rift, perhaps plugging into your smartphone, I'm very excited by sense surround, like fully immersive mediated experiences, which will allow brands to tell stories that are much more, that live in the intersubjective space.
And that works with the biotech thing. Could we have lights here on the floor? Let me open it up, because I'm sure there's one or two questions.
Great.
If we could turn the lights on the floor, so I can see. Anybody wants to come in with a question? Anybody? They're all overwhelmed, absolutely overwhelmed. At the back there? Nobody? Right, well, let me ask you a follow-on question to this. What is the best approach to going into the unknown when it comes to creating this visceral, perhaps all-surround virtual reality experiences? Perhaps to speak to the content makers, the people who are really very much focused on creating content that matches what you're trying to say.
Yeah,
How do you reach that wow element?
I think you have to create content that moves people, right? We all want to be moved. You know, as Camus used to say, life should be lived to the point of tears. So what we're looking for is catharsis, right? We want to create tension and then dissolve tension. And I think the best media experiences are the ones that do that. There's a reason why when people are moved, when they're inspired, they want to share. And look at the success of Upworthy. Upworthy's entire ethos is, this is worth sharing because it's important, because it's moving, because it touched something inside of me. And you know, when I started doing these videos, it was for that very same reason. I wanted to create media that would take the metaphor of media as drug. You know, usually it's used in a negative context. People are like, oh, media is a drug, it programs you. Yeah, but that's if you look at it as a narcotic that stupefies its audience. But there's other drugs that dissolve boundaries, like Timothy Leary used to promote the psychedelics, the theogenics, that allow us to let go of prior thought formations and see the world in a new way. So can media be seen that way? Can media be dissolving boundaries? Can media be psychedelic? Certainly films like Avatar, films like Gravity, they show that it can. Yeah.
Jason, we have to leave it there.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you.
And I do know that Jason is overwhelming.